Hello there, welcome to Showcase. Jane Birkin was a tremendous success, both as a singer as well as an actor. It was that double quality that carried her to international stardom. And now, in the wake of her death, we'll look at the makings of Birkin's star image.
Jane Birkin was born in London and quick in getting into a life of arts and culture. She first married John Barry, the man behind the famous James Bond theme. Their relationship lasted 3 years. Her first shot to fame, though, came with the Michelangelo Antonioni film Blow Up, which was an abstract examination of 1960s London. Despite her British nationality, Birkin found an artistic homeland in France. She herself would say, "I've been adopted here. They like my accent." And her association with songwriter Serge Gainsbourg there defined her as one of the decade's most famous celebrities. Birkin herself also sang and wrote songs, but she kept her film career alive as well. She appeared in around 70 movies and worked with French auteurs like Jean-Luc Godard and Agnès Varda. That is why French President Emmanuel Macron has called her a complete artist. But she went beyond that by also becoming part of a famous brand. In 1984, she inspired the Hermes Birkin handbag. Reportedly, that came about after Birkin complained that she had trouble finding a bag that could fulfill her needs as a mother. Political activism also found a place in Birkin's life. She supported immigrants and campaigned against the French far right. Birkin's death at the age of 76 drew responses from people of all walks of life. That includes Macron, who said the British star sang the most beautiful words in their language. A remark like that coming from the French shows that, through artistic means, Birkin managed to break cultural barriers to become an international star. And her legacy will perhaps resonate for an even longer time to come.
First the writers, now the actors. It seems we won't be able to watch new Hollywood productions for a while, as many TV shows and movies in the US have been put on indefinite hold. It's because the actors have now joined the writers on the picket lines, turning it into a double strike once again after more than 60 years.
Hollywood has crawled to a standstill. Both SAG-AFTRA, Hollywood's largest union representing 160,000 film and television actors, and the Writers Guild of America are demanding increases in base pay and residuals or fees paid from streaming television. They also want assurances that their work will not be replaced by artificial intelligence. As actors join writers in their strike against studios and streaming platforms in both the Los Angeles area and New York, many late-night talk shows, TV productions and films have now shut down, and some in mid-production.
We're all here fighting for better residuals in the streaming era. We're fighting to protect ourselves against AI. We're fighting for pension and health increases. And, 3 years ago our contracts were up, and we very graciously agreed to continue under the same contracts in the hopes that 3 years later, which is now, producers would come to us in good faith and we would make the changes that have been needing to happen since really the beginning of the digital boom. And unfortunately that didn't happen. Stay stronger!
The double strike is the first such joint effort in more than 60 years, and it's highly expected to impact the industry's economy.
I came because I'm been in SAG, and it's just time for a change. Our contracts ended, and we're in the front lines of the things that are being filmed, and we're not getting compensated. We've been striking with the writers, and just to hear things like we're going to starve the writers out, that's the kind of people that are on the other ends of these contracts? Who starves out families and people? You know, so we're out here to make a difference and stand up for what's right for living wages for our lives.
Time you stop with your multi-million-dollar...
Although the strike may spare new releases in the coming months, with many films having already completed their principal photography, for those hitting the cinemas next year, it could be another story.
"50 years ago, The Exorcist enjoyed a great success and broke box office records. Today, it still tops lists of the scariest films of all time. But as Alican points out in our movie almanac, it also impacted the future of cinema like none other.
Hey, where'd this come from? I found it. Where? Closet.
The Exorcist is the story of a girl possessed and her mother's attempt to help her. Nobody expected this premise to change the course of mainstream cinema the way it did. It basically lent scary movies a blockbuster edge.
Who's Captain Howdy?
You know, I make the questions and he does the answers.
In 1973, The Exorcist became the biggest moneymaker of the year, leaving behind such features as George Lucas's American Graffiti and the James Bond flick Live and Let Die.
Father Karras. It's an honor to meet you, Father.
To this day, it's still Warner Brothers' highest-grossing movie when adjusted for inflation.
Very tired. No.
What the hell do you mean going off and leaving Reagan by herself? Are you crazy? Her window's wide open. The whole room is freezing.
Didn't he tell you?
Didn't who tell me?
Burke isn't...
What's Burke got to do with it?
It did to scary movies what Stanley Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey to sci-fi cinema. Such pictures were never taken seriously, but being based on the book by William Peter Blatty gave The Exorcist a high-concept quality. It had respected actors like Max von Sydow and Ellen Burstyn as well.
He must have been drunk. He fell down from the top of the steps right outside. By the time he hit M Street, he broke his neck.
If I ask him to tell me, will you let him answer?
No,
Why not?
I'm afraid.
As critic Mark Kermode points out, it also moved away from the gothic imagery that was dominant in 1960s movies, and instead gave audiences a modern urban horror story.
I'd like you to go quickly across to the residence, Damien.
Scholars believe that played a major part in its success. They argue that through the film, American audiences got to exorcise their anxiety of late 1960s, brought upon by political, cultural, social upheavals.
Well, the doctors say I shouldn't.
To accept that argument is up to the viewer, but the bottom line is that The Exorcist did manage to leave behind both classic dramas and new Hollywood films to elevate genre movies to the top of the food chain. And a good deal of current blockbusters, which are almost all non-dramas, owe a lot to its success.
He will like to confuse us.
Japanese photographer Tatsuya Tanaka is pretty famous on social media with nearly 4 million followers. It's all because he turns everyday objects into cool miniature worlds. Now he has opened an exhibition in Brazil depicting Japanese daily life.
It's totally delicate. It gives one the sense that life doesn't always need to be represented in a magnanimous way.
é meio inesperado.
It's an unexpected exhibition. You see leeks and onions represent real-life objects through the miniatures.
Da vida real, só que em miniatura.
No trailers, no ads. Animation master Hayao Miyazaki just quietly released his latest film, How Do You Live, in Japan. And this mysterious approach seems to have made fans even more curious about what to expect.
The only information shared with the public about Hayao Miyazaki's latest film was this poster drawn by the filmmaker himself. And only a limited number of cinemas in Japan got that privilege. The story follows a 15-year-old boy who's coping with the death of his father. For the early viewers of the animated film, the lack of information made the experience even more exciting.
Because I didn't know anything about it ahead of time, my excitement increased even more, which I think was great.
Since there was absolutely no promotion, it felt as if I could experience it all directly with my senses.
Miyazaki is known for a long roster of films, including Howl's Moving Castle and Academy Award winner Spirited Away. A decade ago, the 82-year-old said he was too tired to make another full-length feature film and was retiring. But then he changed his mind, and after a couple of short projects, he began working on How Do You Live?
I thought it was really good. From the start I was really excited because I could see a movie from director Hayao Miyazaki.
I thought his previous film was the last. Then this was announced, and they say it is the last. So I was really looking forward to it.
It's hard to tell if Miyazaki is done with filmmaking just yet, but in the case of How Do You Live, no overseas release date has been announced so far. But be aware, as it might just surprisingly pop up in your local cinema.
Berlin's House of World Cultures is one of the rare institutions that has an African-born director. And this change is slowly showing up in its programs with an aim to highlight post-colonial multiculturalism in a place that has long represented Western hegemony.
Americans built the House of World Cultures in 1956 during the Cold War for propaganda purposes, at a time when Germany was still divided. For its new director, who's originally from Cameroon, the building was placed strategically so that people on the other side of the Berlin Wall, in the then communist East, could see it. And this was representing freedom, but from the Western perspective.
And the history of the house has really been, a history of seeing the world from the West. But we would like to, as part of our program, just twist and see the world from that other angle.
After renovations, the place reopened in June, and Nidekung's first project fits with expanding the centre's offerings. The exhibition is called Quilombismo. It refers to the communities formed in the 17th century by African slaves who fled to remote parts of Brazil.
It's the first project we're doing in the house, which has as point of departure, the space, the practices, the cultures, the religions within that space called the Quilombo, which were maroon spaces, that were created primarily by African peoples that had escaped from the plantations and created these emancipatory societies in which they could live together with the indigenous people in that place of the world called Brazil, but also in other parts of the world.
And part of the exhibition is this work that's glued to the floor, African braids laced together, a symbol of liberation for black people.
In relation to Quilombismo, hair plays a very important role. So in escaping from the plantations, one of the spaces that were used as cartographic spaces were people's heads. So people plaited their hair to show that this is the way out, right? You could plait people's hair in a particular way to say, if you go northwards, you get out of this place.
The institution will also host performances, concerts, films, discussions, and an exhibition of contemporary art from post-colonial societies across Africa, the Americas, Asia, and Oceania.
The Immigration Museum in Paris is set to reopen after almost 3 years of renovation. The permanent collection has been spruced up, and maps, photos, paintings, and other documents tell a story that leads from immigration to integration.
The Immigration Museum in Paris is looking for an answer to the question of how immigrants have shaped French society. 11 important dates have been picked out for a chronological record.
On each of these dates, we'll look at the key moments in the history of immigration. Today, 1 French person in 3 is an immigrant, the child of an immigrant or the grandchild of an immigrant. 1 in 3 French people is a considerable number, and this museum, in a way, is an archaeology of the present time. How did we become France?
With an almost doubled gallery space, the museum uses new items to tell the many stories of immigration to France.
Here we're really on a very historical tour, which is also extremely enriched in relation to what may have been there. 80% of what we're showing has never been displayed in the previous permanent exhibition. We used to have an exhibition space of around 1,000 square meters, which is now 1,800 square meters. At each stage, we're keen to include historical data, as well as documents, life stories with objects donated by people who use them to tell their own stories, and contemporary works of art that weave their way through the exhibition, providing a different perspective.
With nearly 600 works, documents, art, and historical objects on display, the museum uses every means possible to fight the prejudice towards immigrants.
Our aim, of course, is to reach out to everyone. And if people who today are not interested in this history, thanks to the museum, thanks to what we offer, become interested and know more about it, we'll be very happy. We're convinced that prejudice is often born of a form of ignorance.
A number of portraits are also featured as a reminder that the people behind the numbers and statistics are real, each with their own struggles, hopes, dreams, and stories.
From Egypt and Brazil to Mexico and China, Spanish photographer Isabel Munoz has made her way around the world to tell new stories. But those new stories are often related to ancient traditions and historic places, just like the archaeological sites in southeastern Turkey, where life once existed around 12,000 years ago. Well, she went there and brought her perspective to Istanbul's Pera Museum. Göbekli Tepe in southeastern Turkey dates back to approximately 12,000 years ago. It's believed to be the oldest temple in the world, and there are other excavation sites nearby, including Karahan Tepe. And as a photographer who's been exploring nature, the origin of people, and their lifestyles for more than 4 decades, Isabel Munoz felt the urge to visit those places. So she did. After 4 trips and taking thousands of photographs, her exhibit, A New Story, Photographs from and Around Göbekli Tepe, is ready to meet viewers in Istanbul.
I wanted to transmit the feeling, be as near as the people that live there, the artists that did this civilization, to be able to share, to be like a bridge between them and us. And then I think that all those motifs are like a calligraphy. They wanted to tell us the story in a way. And I'm sure they were much more knowledgeable, and they knew about the stars, about the constellations.
For Munoz, photography is about feelings and sharing emotions. And while she tried to catch snaps reflecting the mystery of Göbekli Tepe and around, she also has come to realize that archaeologists working next to her do something similar.
I think photography is about sharing, and I found out that archaeology was about sharing. I asked one of the young archaeologues that were on the site, because they had just discovered one of these big bulls that they were taking to the museum, and I thought, this is a treasure. And I asked them, what do you feel, when? And he said, no, it's not only discovering a treasure, it's that we are doing a service for the society, for humanity, And I felt very near him, because photography is about that.
Munoz says she sought to understand how people in the past lived and felt. And to reflect that better, she worked during the night and also used different materials and techniques.
When we mix sand, stone, serigraphy, gold, and so on, we have the impression to be like alchemists, like poetic alchemists of these old times.
Göbekli Tepe was discovered in 1963, and excavations have never stopped since then. And this exhibition at the Para Museum reveals what a world-famous photographer managed to take out from that mysterious area and how its people still inspire us generations later. Esra Dürüst, TRT World, Istanbul. Hundreds of treasures collected by Spanish monarchs are set to go on display later this month at a new museum in Madrid. The collection spans over 5 centuries and includes paintings, tapestries, furniture, and royal carriages.
The Royal Collections Gallery holds 650 works of art that once belonged to Spanish royals. Most of the works will be on show for the first time, and some were just collecting dust at historic sites across Spain.
There are works that come from palaces or monasteries, and here we promote another way of looking at them. But there are other works, such as the White Horse of Velázquez or the Caravaggio, that were not kept hidden inside the palace, but at the same time, they weren't part of the tours for visitors to the royal palace either.
Although the number of items on display is quite high, there is so much more to see. The museum has developed a system to bring even more national treasures on display.
A third of the works is going to rotate every year and a half, more or less, because the idea is to show all the national heritage we have. We can put the restored works on display and then they can go back to their original places.
The collection offers a wide range of items. Stunning art by Italian masters Caravaggio and Tintoretto stand next to Francisco de Goya's depiction of historic upheavals. Another significant item is the very first edition of Don Quixote. And Spain's first female sculptor, Lisa Roldan's work, is also at the museum. The collection shows the diversity, richness, and quality of what Spanish monarchs collected over a vast stretch of time.
That's it for this episode of Showcase. I'm Esra Dürüst from me and the whole team here in Istanbul. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.